Rising tensions between two of NATO's biggest militaries are driving fears of the first war between two NATO alliance members. What will be the US's or NATO's role if a war begins between Greece and Turkey? This is a flashpoint that most people are not paying attention to right now. Let's take a look at the map. Where's the map? Over here. Okay, let's see. We know where India is. We know how to orient ourselves. Go west, 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 west. Go to the Mediterranean region, and that's where you have Turkey and Greece. So, what's happening here? So, Greece and Turkey have a very nasty history, a history that goes back to the Ottoman occupation of the Anatolian Peninsula. The entirety of Anatolia, which is the major portion of Turkey, the peninsular region between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, this region is called Anatolia. For the past 3,000 or so years ago, it was Greek. The city of Troy is on the western coast of Anatolia, on the Aegean Sea, and so on. Then the Turks occupied Anatolia gradually, beginning about, I don't know, what, 800 years or so ago. Yeah. They were fleeing from the great armies of the great Mongol conqueror Chinggis Khan. And that's why they came south from Central Asia and they entered Anatolia and they entered European history, essentially. And then they slowly conquered parts of Anatolia, and then they conquered the whole of Anatolia. And eventually you had the Ottoman Empire that conquered parts of Europe as well. It was a very large empire. Yeah. So that's the history. And Greece was under Ottoman occupation for a significant period of time. The Greeks don't like Turkey for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons. I'll not go into the history. If you're interested, look it up. I think it makes sense. What kind of atrocities would have been perpetrated on the Greeks. Yeah. So even in the late 19th century, the city of Thessaloniki was part of the Ottoman Empire. It was then called Salonika. And then there were many wars between Greece and Turkey, including in the 1920s, the Turkish War of Independence, in which Mustafa Kemal Atatürk was able to evict the Western coalition out of Turkey and create an independent nation of Turkey. So Greece and Turkey, they have this blood hatred, this blood enmity. Many Turks actually have Greek ethnicity. And the reason for that, if you want to know, please study it yourself. Yeah, I'll not go into that right now. No need to create controversies unnecessarily at this point. So Greece and Turkey are enemies. Understand that. Greece and Turkey are actually mortal enemies who find themselves both part of NATO, strangely enough. So that's the thing which I keep talking about. That the real major power in Western Europe and Southern Europe is the US. That's the real major power in Europe, in especially Western and Southern Europe. It's the US that's the major power. They have kept this continent more or less peaceful. Obviously, they have done some mischief here and there. You can look it up. So that's why these two enemy nations are part of this US-led coalition, NATO. Now, what is happening? So now, why are we seeing these tensions between these two nations, right? So that's the history. Now Greece and Turkey are now becoming more and more. This relationship is becoming more and more tense. Tensions are rising. What is exacerbating the rising of the tensions? That we have to understand. Something must be happening, right? That is causing the tensions to rise. What is happening is the question. And who is causing this to happen? Let's see. Let us see. Let's put something. So before I tell you why the tensions are rising, let me show you an example of the rising tensions. This is just this week. Mr. Erdogan was in Bali for the G20 summit and he threatened Greece. Like I said yesterday, Erdogan repeats threat against Greece during G20. The Turkish president warned the neighboring country Greece that he could invade it suddenly one night. What a thing to say. What a thing to say. Huh? He told reporters that Turkey can come suddenly one night and that its neighbor should mind its place and remember the history. Remember the history. Remember what we did to you, what we have done to you for centuries. Mind your place. And we can come suddenly one night, any night. We can come and things will go really bad for you. So now let me explain why these tensions are rising. Why is Mr. Erdogan so angry? Let's understand. Here is one example. Do you see this? Turkey condemns US decision to lift Cyprus arms embargo. Let's understand where is Cyprus. Let's go back to the map. Where is Cyprus, and what does Cyprus have to do with all this? So Cyprus is this island here. You see this island here? It is west of Lebanon and south of Turkey, Anatolia. This island has historically been a Greek island. During the Ottoman occupation, there were lots of people who were converted to the Ottoman religion. And northern Cyprus is now, in the 1970s, the Turks invaded the island of Cyprus, and they currently occupy the northern, let's say, quarter or third of the island. There is this dashed line that you see over here on the map. It's like a line of control, yeah, between the Greek held island, parts of the island, which is southern Cyprus, and the Turkish held part, which is northern Cyprus. And Turkey has a military presence on Cyprus. There is a significant Turkish military presence on Cyprus. Yeah. And the Americans have had a policy for the past 30, 40, 35 years or so to not interfere in this dispute. Yeah. And the Americans had an arms embargo on Cyprus, which means that they had a policy of not selling any arms to Cyprus, which means the Greek Cyprus. And now what's happened? They have changed that policy. They have decided to lift the Cyprus arms embargo, which means they are arming the Greek held portion of the island against the Turkish held portion of the island. So if there are tensions rising, who is creating the rising of the tensions? It's the US. Now we have to understand why they're doing this as well. So this is one thing. Yeah. So the Americans have fully lifted the weapons embargo on the divided island of Cyprus starting in 2023. The Turks said it would start an arms race and so on. So they are selling various weapons and so on. The Americans are. Let's see what is written here. Let's take a look at a different article to understand what the Americans are arming the Cypriots with. Yeah, this is an example of the weaponry that the Americans are selling to Cyprus. Greece receives more M117 Guardian armored safety vehicles from the US. So the US government plans to supply more than around 1,200 armored vehicles to Greece by the end of this year, 2022, and so on. So that will bolster the Greek military, and this, I think, is in Greece. So understand this. The Americans are sending arms to Cyprus, the Greek held portion of Cyprus. They are arming it against the Turkish held portion of Cyprus. And they are also sending significant supplies, large supplies of these armored vehicles to mainland Greece itself. Yeah. So the Americans are strengthening the Greek military and the Greek military capabilities, and the only enemy Greece has is Turkey. That's what's happening. That is what is causing these tensions to rise. Let's see some more. Let me put that article back on the screen. Is this the article, or is it a different article? I should see. Let's see the previous one. Let's see where the Americans are. Okay, let's see this third article. Let me put a different article. A third article. Here we are. So this is an article in maybe a Turkish publication, right? And the Americans are saying that they are arming Greece as a precaution against Russian activities. That's what the Americans are saying. And there is this place called Alexandroupoli port, which is very close to the Turkish border, where there is a significant influx of American weapons, and there is a significant militarization of this port done by the Americans. The Americans say it is aimed at Russia. This place received 14 times more military supplies from the US in 2021 than in previous years. A dramatic increase that cannot be solely explained by the Ukraine war. The Americans are also providing Greece with F-35 fighter planes, and they have refused to provide those fighter planes to Turkey. They have refused to provide those fighter planes to Turkey. So these are the kind of things that are happening. So it is American activities that are exacerbating and creating these tensions between Turkey and Greece. Yes. And so that's why Mr. Erdogan is so unhappy. That's why he's all riled up, and that's why he's making threats to Greece. That remember your place in history, remember the past, what we have done to you, and we could come and invade you one night. It could happen. So it is a statement that he's making against Greece and also against the Americans who are arming Greece. Now, why is the United States arming Greece? The United States is arming Greece, and the lag begins. The US is arming Greece against Turkey and also to some extent against Russia. If you see the map, then Greece is not really that far from Russia. Greece is a major nation on the Aegean Sea, and it is the sea that connects the Black Sea with the Mediterranean Sea, and Russia is not very, very far off. And Greece also had various tensions in the past with Russia. So the Americans are using that as an excuse to arm Greece. We also know that the Turks have in the past bought weapons systems from Russia, including the S-400 anti-missile system. So, and because the Turks bought this S-400 system from the Russians, that's why the Americans refused to sell the F-35 fighter plane to Turkey. So there are tensions between the US and Turkey, and the fact that the Americans are arming Greece is a continuation of these tensions. So it's a message that they are sending to Turkey. And we also have to remember that there are a number of US nuclear weapons on Turkish soil, and these nuclear weapons are aimed at Russia. So it is a very complicated situation that we are in. It's a complicated situation. But Turkey is slowly moving eastwards. Turkey, see, Mr. Erdogan has imperial ambitions. He essentially wants to recreate the Ottoman Empire. Yes. He has already tried to invade Syria. There are portions of Syria that are occupied, small portions of Syria that are occupied by Turkish troops or have been in the past. Turkey was closely aligned with ISIS during the ISIS disaster in the Middle East. Well, ISIS is a whole different story, but that was there. Yeah. And Turkey has imperial ambitions of its own. It wants to become an empire in its own right. It wants to assume the global leadership of the Islamic world, which will bring it into conflict with the US. Its ambitions are not compatible with US ambitions. Yeah. So it is natural for Turkey to slowly drift away from NATO. But since we have US nuclear weapons on Turkish territory, it means you have US armed personnel also on Turkish territory, which complicates the situation. And yet Turkey is nowadays threatening Greece with war. It could actually happen. The Turks may at some point in time decide to attack Greece, which would be a very dangerous thing for them to do, because the Americans are in a position to destroy Turkey if the Turks do that. So that's what it is. So everything is not well in NATO. Most likely, we will not see a war between Greece and Turkey anytime soon, but the tensions exist, and the tensions are getting worse. It's the Americans who are making the tensions worse. It's also the reason for that is also because Turkey has its own ambitions. It does not want to stay an obedient vassal of the US. It also wants to become a major player in the world. So all of this is caused by the visible, gradual decline of US hegemony worldwide. The US is now perceived to be a declining power, which is why Turkey is raising its head and saying that I have my own ambitions and I will do things and I will not obey all the dictates of the US. And that's what the Saudis are also doing. And various other nations will now feel like doing that as well. The Germans are unhappy. Because they can no longer acquire Russian gas, which they were getting for so cheap. Nord Stream has been destroyed. I think we know who did that, right? And so on. So it's a complicated situation. Who's funding Turkey? Most likely the Turks have their own economy, of course. They have weapons that they sell to the world, and obviously there are funds coming in. when it comes to Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Saudi Arabia don't have the best relationship. Just like Saudi Arabia and Iran don't have the best relationship, Saudi Arabia and Turkey don't have the best relationship, because both are major powers and Turkey has imperial ambitions. Saudi Arabia is perceived to be globally, from the world's perspective, to be the home of Islam, because the two holiest sites of Islam, Mecca and Medina, are in Saudi Arabia. Turkey doesn't like this. Turkey wants to reclaim the position of the great leader of the Islamic world, the great caliph, the caliphate, right? The last caliphate was the Ottoman Caliphate, based out of Constantinople, Istanbul. They would like that position. They would like to reclaim that position. But right now, Saudi Arabia has that position. So that's why there is this rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Turkey, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So that is the complicated situation where we are in right now. I personally don't see a war breaking out anytime very soon, because if the Turks attack Greece, the Americans will defend Greece, and the Americans will not tolerate that sort of action by one of the nations they consider to be their vassal state. So yeah, very complicated situation, and tensions are rising within NATO.